The heavy oak doors of Windsor Castle had already been locked for the night. Yet, on the king's desk lay a document that would permanently alter the balance of power within the British monarchy. Without a single camera present, King Charles signed away a piece of sovereign authority. He bypassed hundreds of years of royal precedent to name Catherine, Princess of Wales, the absolute guardian of the crown jewels. This sudden secret decree has sent shockwaves through palace walls, leaving Queen Camilla blindsided and the exiled Sussexes demanding answers. The Midnight Ink King. Charles held a heavy fountain pen over the thick parchment, his fingers pressed down hard on the desk. It was just after 11 at night. The room was cold, lit only by a single green-shaded lamp. Outside, the wind rattled the old windows of Windsor Castle. Two senior legal advisors stood perfectly still across from him. They did not speak. They did not even look at each other. The king dragged the pen across the bottom of the page, signing his name in thick black ink. He dropped the pen. The metal tip made a sharp clink against the wood. It was done. A letters patent is a rare legal instrument. It does not go through Parliament for a vote. It represents the absolute raw power of the crown. This specific document contained 5 short paragraphs. It officially stripped the traditional oversight of the realm's state regalia from the Lord Chamberlain's office. It transferred total individual custody to Catherine. No commoner-born woman had ever held this level of constitutional trust in the history of the House of Windsor. The royal staff received the internal memo at 6 the following morning. It arrived as an encrypted digital file marked for immediate viewing. The message stated that the keys to the subterranean vaults at the Tower of London were being reallocated. Security codes were already changing. The timing of the signature caught everyone off guard. Courtiers expected the king to rest after his recent medical treatments. Instead, he spent his evening with constitutional lawyers. This sudden move bypassed centuries of protocol. Usually, changes to the custody of state assets involve months of committee meetings. The Prime Minister is typically briefed weeks in advance. This time, the government received a courtesy notification less than an hour before the signing. The urgency was palpable. The king wanted the legal shield in place before the sun came up. The atmosphere inside Clarence House shifted instantly. Queen Camilla left her breakfast tray completely untouched. Her private secretary walked into the room carrying a copy of the signed decree. Camilla looked at the document, then looked out the window toward the gardens. For years, the queen consort held informal dominion over the family's public image and ceremonial appearances. This new order drew a sharp line in the sand. It took away her leverage. The tension turned personal by midday. A scheduled meeting regarding summer garden parties was abruptly canceled. Staff reported hearing muffled, tense voices from the private sitting room. The king remained inside his study, refusing visitors. Camilla walked down the long gallery alone, her heels clicking loudly against the marble floor. She did not attend the afternoon briefing with the estate managers. The public knows the crown jewels as symbols of pageantry. They see them on television during major state openings, but behind the scenes, they represent real, tangible power. The individual who controls the regalia controls the visual legitimacy of the monarchy itself. If a monarch cannot access the imperial state crown, a coronation or a state opening cannot legally proceed in its traditional format. Catherine now held that exact veto power. A bizarre clause sat near the bottom of the 3rd page. It stated that the guardian has the final say on the physical movement of any item valued over £10 million. This rule applies even if the king himself requests the item for a private event. The king effectively locked his own family out of the treasure chest. He handed the only key to his daughter-in-law. This brings us to a major question. Why would a sitting monarch willingly limit his own authority over state property? The answer lies in a private meeting that took place 3 weeks earlier at Sandringham. Prince William had sat down with his father in the long library. They spent 4 hours reviewing the current family roster. The king's health was the central topic. They needed a legal fortress that could not be breached by disgruntled family members. William did not want his father's legacy tied up in future family disputes. He pushed for a legal mechanism that would survive any sudden political transition. The king agreed. They secretly instructed a trusted firm of constitutional attorneys to draft the document. They kept the entire project away from the main palace press office. They knew a leak would spark an immediate internal war. The plan worked perfectly. By the time the rest of the family realized what was happening, the document was already registered in the High Court. It was legally binding. It could not be revoked without the king's direct signature or a special act of parliament that the government would never grant. Catherine was officially entrenched. The reaction from the broader family was swift but silent. Phone logs from the palace switchboard showed a massive spike in internal calls between Windsor and various private residences. Prince Andrew's office attempted to secure an immediate audience with the king. The request was denied by the king's personal physician, citing the monarch's need for absolute rest. The door was firmly shut. But the real shockwave traveled far beyond the borders of the United Kingdom. Across the Atlantic, in a quiet enclave in California, the news landed like a bombshell. A high-ranking royal aide confirmed that an email copy of the decree was sent to Montecito as a formal notification. The response was immediate. Legal representatives for the Sussexes began reviewing the text within hours of its release. The document directly impacts the wider family dynamics. For years, rumors circulated about the distribution of royal heritage assets. Prince Harry had always maintained a deep interest in the items associated with his late mother, Princess Diana. While many of those pieces are private, some are linked directly to state collections. This new decree places a permanent barrier between those assets and anyone living outside the active working royal circle. A close contact within the California household leaked a brief detail to a trusted journalist. The Sussexes felt the timing of the decree was a deliberate statement. It happened right before a planned international media push for their new charitable projects. The news of Catherine's elevation completely dominated the global news cycle, pushing everything else to the back pages. The mystery deepens when you look at the specific wording of the appointment. The title is listed as a life peerage equivalent, meaning it cannot be stripped away even if the government changes or if the monarchy undergoes a radical restructure. It is a permanent shield. This leads to the most critical aspect of the entire document. A hidden stipulation in the final paragraph changes everything for the rest of the royal family. It details exactly what happens if the monarch becomes incapacitated. Vaults and vows. The heavy iron key felt cold in Catherine's hand. She sat at her writing desk in Adelaide Cottage, looking down at the ancient piece of ironwork. It arrived in a velvet-lined box, delivered by a royal courier under armed escort. This was not a ceremonial prop for a photograph. It was the master bypass key to the Martin Tower vaults. For over 700 years, this specific key remained under the strict custody of the keeper of the jewel house. Now, by royal decree, the lock could not turn without her direct authorization. The physical transfer of power happened without fanfare. At 3 in the afternoon, a plain black vehicle entered the secure gates of Kensington Palace. Inside was the resident governor of the Tower of London. He carried the traditional leather-bound ledger of state regalia. Catherine signed the ledger on the line directly beneath King Charles's signature. With that single stroke of a pen, she assumed individual legal liability for over 100 items. These pieces formed the physical core of the British state. The public view of these treasures is strictly controlled. Visitors to the tower see them through thick plates of bomb-proof glass. They glide past on a moving walkway while armed guards watch from the corners. But the legal reality behind the glass is far more complex. The crown jewels are not the personal property of the king. They belong to the institution of the crown itself. By placing Catherine between the king and the institution, Charles created an unprecedented constitutional buffer. The ancient rulebook contains a fascinating loophole. Under a statute dating back to the reign of King Charles II, the sovereign can theoretically sell or pledge certain unconsecrated items during a national emergency. King Charles I famously melted down royal plate to fund his armies during the Civil War. By appointing a guardian, King Charles III permanently closed this loophole. The king can no longer use the state assets as financial or political leverage. He surrendered that option entirely to Catherine. This arrangement instantly triggered a quiet panic within the palace legal department. A senior clerk resigned within 48 hours of the announcement. He left a brief note citing irreconcilable differences over constitutional procedure. The paperwork revealing his departure was quietly filed away under standard non-disclosure agreements. The palace wanted no public record of internal dissent. Prince William's role in this transition was pivotal. He did not watch from the sidelines. 3 weeks before the signing, William met secretly with the Constable of the Tower at a private club in Mayfair. They spent the evening reviewing the physical security protocols of the fortress. William wanted to ensure that the transfer of authority was not just a legal fiction. He demanded a full audit of every electronic sensor and biometric lock inside the vaults. The results of that audit remained strictly confidential. However, changes at the tower became visible to sharp-eyed observers within days. The guard detail surrounding the jewel house changed its rotation schedule. The traditional yeoman warders were joined by plainclothes officers from the Metropolitan Police's Royalty Protection Command. The security perimeter expanded to include the outer walls facing the River Thames. This brings us to the immediate family friction. Queen Camilla had spent the last 2 years carefully curating her own public image around the historic collection. She famously chose to wear Queen Mary's crown at the coronation, altering it to include her own diamonds. This gave her an informal status as the ultimate tastemaker of the family's historic pieces. The new decree shattered that status overnight. Camilla could no longer request alterations to any piece of state jewelry without Catherine's written consent. The first test of this new dynamic occurred during a planning session for an upcoming diplomatic reception. Camilla requested the use of a specific diamond necklace originally worn by Queen Alexandra. The palace jeweler went to fulfill the request, but stopped. The system required a digital authorization code assigned exclusively to Catherine's office. The request hung in limbo for 4 hours before Catherine finally cleared the release. The point was made. The hierarchy had changed. The tension spilled over into the staff ranks. Courtiers who previously answered directly to the Queen Consort found themselves second-guessed by Catherine's team. Phone lines between Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace remained busy late into the evening. A clear divide emerged between the old guard, who favored traditional monarchical privilege, and the new guard, who sought to institutionalize every asset. The international implications of the move began to surface by midweek. Diplomatic cables from Commonwealth realms requested clarification on the decree. In nations where the British monarch remains the head of state, the crown jewels carry deep symbolic weight. They represent the shared history of the entire realm. Governments in Ottawa and Canberra wanted to know if this change altered the king's ability to travel with the imperial state crown for overseas parliaments. The answer was a firm yes. Under the new guidelines, the imperial state crown cannot leave the United Kingdom under any circumstances without a special joint warrant signed by both the Prime Minister and the Guardian. This effectively grounds the crown. It ensures that the primary symbol of British sovereignty remains firmly on British soil, regardless of where the king chooses to travel. This strict rule serves a deeper purpose. It prevents any future attempt to hold a coronation or a major state event outside the capital. During World War II, plans were drawn up to move the crown jewels to Canada in the event of an invasion. King George VI rejected the plan, stating that the king must stay with his treasures. Charles has now codified that belief. The treasures must stay with Catherine. The mystery of why this happened now continues to baffle royal commentators. The timing seems completely detached from the usual calendar of royal events. There are no major anniversaries or state visits scheduled for the immediate weeks ahead. This suggests that the urgency was driven entirely by internal factors. The king wanted the legal structure finalized before the autumn political season began. A closer look at the High Court registry reveals a fascinating detail. The letters patent was filed alongside a secondary document marked as highly sensitive. This second paper remains under seal for 100 years. However, legal experts assume it contains a specific operational guidelines for the Guardian in the event of a sudden royal transition. This brings us back to the hidden clause at the bottom of the decree. It details what happens if the king becomes unable to perform his constitutional duties. The document states that the Guardian assumes temporary custody of the Great Seal of the realm alongside the crown jewels. This gives Catherine unprecedented control over the physical mechanisms of government during a crisis. Behind closed doors, Queen Camilla sat at the large mahogany dining table inside Clarence's house. Her tea grew cold in its porcelain cup. She kept her eyes fixed on a red leather folder resting next to her plate. Inside was the official carbon copy of the king's new decree. Her private secretary stood by the door, holding a list of canceled appointments. The morning sunlight hit the polished wood of the table, but the mood in the room was frosty. Camilla finally closed the folder with a sharp snap. She did not say a word to her staff. She stood up and walked straight to the king's private wing. The king's personal staff tried to block the entrance. They cited direct orders from the royal medical team. The king needed absolute quiet after his morning therapy sessions. Camilla ignored the warnings. She pushed past the heavy double doors into the library. Charles sat in his favorite armchair by the fireplace, a wool blanket draped over his knees. A fountain pen and a stack of historical texts sat on the small table beside him. The confrontation lasted exactly 12 minutes. Palace staff reported hearing raised voices through the thick oak insulation. This was highly unusual for Clarence's house, where protocols usually keep disagreements strictly silent. Camilla questioned the lack of consultation. She had spent months preparing for the upcoming autumn state visits, selecting specific historical brooches and tiaras to match diplomatic themes. Now, those choices required a formal digital signature from Kensington Palace. The king remained firm. He pointed to the documents on his table and refused to alter a single line of the text. The reality of the new decree began to set in by 2 that afternoon. The master of the household issued a new directive to the jewelry security team. From that moment on, any request for the deployment of state regalia had to clear a 2-step authentication process. The first step was a standard palace log. The second step was a secure digital token issued only by Catherine's private office. The Queen Consort's staff no longer possessed the authority to override a delay. This structural shift caused immediate chaos in the lower levels of Buckingham Palace. The royal conservationists were in the middle of cleaning the Delhi Durbar tiara. Under the old rules, the tiara would return straight to the Queen's private safe upon completion. The new rules required the piece to be loaded into an armored transit case and moved directly to the Tower of London vaults. The conservation team had to wait for 3 hours in the corridor while the paperwork cleared. The internal power struggle quickly spread to the press offices. The Buckingham Palace communications team wanted to release a standard low-key statement framing the move as a routine administrative update. They wanted to bury the news on the official royal website under a generic headline. However, Kensington Palace insisted on a full constitutional filing. William's team wanted the public to understand the permanent nature of the appointment. They won the argument. The full text of the letters patent went live on the public register by late afternoon. The tension turned even more concrete during a 3 o'clock briefing with the keeper of the Privy Purse. The financial allocations for the maintenance of the state vaults were officially transferred out of the general palace budget. They were placed into a separate, ring-fenced account, controlled exclusively by the Prince and Princess of Wales. This meant Camilla could no longer authorize expenditures for the display or restoration of the crown jewels. Every penny now required Catherine's approval. The dynamic between the two households had been shifting for months, but this event solidified the new order. Courtiers began changing their allegiances. 2 senior aides who worked for Camilla for over 5 years quietly requested transfers to Kensington Palace. They saw where the permanent authority was moving. The palace hierarchy operates on a strict understanding of future power, and the future clearly belonged to the Princess of Wales. A quiet meeting took place at 4 in the afternoon in the basement offices of the palace. The head of royal security met with the transport team. They reviewed the logistical routes between Windsor Castle and the Tower of London. The new decree meant that the physical movement of the regalia would no longer rely on standard royal Land Rovers. From now on, any transport of the crown jewels required a full military escort provided by the household cavalry. The security protocols were matching the highest level of state threat. This level of security introduced a new mystery into the equation. The sovereign's personal jewelry collection, which includes thousands of pieces left behind by Queen Elizabeth II, was completely omitted from the text. The decree only covered the official state regalia. This meant the private inheritance remained in limbo. Camilla still held the keys to the private safes at Sandringham, yet she had no control over the items required for official state functions. The reason for this omission became clear during a private phone call between the king's personal solicitor and the Archbishop of Canterbury. The private collection is subject to a different set of tax laws and inheritance clauses. Mixing the two collections in a single letters patent would have triggered a massive parliamentary investigation into royal wealth. By separating the state regalia, Charles kept the government out of the family's private financial affairs. The focus now turned to how this change would manifest at the next major public event. The state opening of Parliament was just 6 weeks away. Traditionally, the Queen Consort rides in the state coach alongside the king, wearing a significant piece of historical regalia. The new process meant that Catherine would technically deliver the crown to the Palace of Westminster beforehand, acting as its official custodian. Camilla would have to receive the items under the watchful eye of Catherine's designated officers. The day ended with a quiet dinner at Clarence House. The king and queen ate in silence, according to staff reports. The red folder remained on the side table, a constant reminder of the day's legal revolution. Charles retired to his study early, leaving Camilla alone in the drawing room. She spent the evening reviewing old diaries and guest lists, trying to navigate a court where her signature no longer carried the final weight. The palace lights stayed on much later than usual that night. In the offices of the legal advisors, printers were still running. They were preparing the secondary operational frameworks that would govern the daily relationship between Buckingham Palace and the new Guardian. The old way of running the court was officially over. A new center of gravity had formed in Kensington, and everyone inside the palace walls had to adapt to the change before the next sunrise. The exiled eye. A smart courier van pulled up outside a private estate in Montecito, California. The driver handed a heavy, waterproof envelope to the security detail at the gate. Inside was an advance print copy of the London Gazette, sent by a sympathetic contact inside the British Civil Service. Prince Harry opened the package at his kitchen island, spreading the crisp pages next to his morning coffee. His eyes stopped on the official notice regarding the letters patent. The publication of the decree meant the decision was absolute. Catherine's name was printed in bold black ink next to the ancient title of Guardian. The legal reality of this document hit the California household instantly. Under British constitutional law, a letters patent cannot be challenged by family members in a standard court. It carries the weight of a royal command. The text explicitly restricted the management of state heritage assets to working members of the royal family. This line of text created a permanent legal separation between the official treasures of the crown and anyone living outside the active circle of the monarchy. The timing of the announcement added immediate tension to the situation. The Sussexes were preparing for a major media launch for their new lifestyle brand and global philanthropic network. Their PR team had spent 3 months securing primetime television slots and digital advertising space. The news from London broke exactly 12 hours before the California campaign went live. The global news cycle shifted entirely to Catherine's new role, pushing the commercial launch completely off the front pages. Harry contacted his London legal representatives by noon Pacific time. He wanted a full breakdown of the specific inventory listed under the new decree. For years, discussions regarding the family inheritance remained informal and private. This new document changed the rules of engagement. It turned a private family matter into a matter of state security. The California legal team spent 4 hours on a secure conference call with constitutional experts in London. Trying to find a loophole in the text, they found none. The document was airtight. It covered every item currently held in the Tower of London, including several historic tiaras that Princess Diana had worn during her marriage to the Prince of Wales. While those specific pieces belonged to the state rather than the private estate, Harry had always hoped they would remain accessible for his own children's future use. The new decree meant that any future loan of these historic items would require a formal application to Catherine's office. This administrative reality caused a sharp reaction behind closed doors in Montecito. Staff members reported a sudden flurry of urgent emails sent to the Duke's remaining contacts within the royal households. Harry wanted to know if his father had signed the document willingly, or if the transition was entirely driven by Prince William's team. The response from London was minimal. The King's private secretary sent a brief, formal reply confirming that the monarch acted with full legal capacity and complete conviction. The mystery of the document grew when the legal team examined the clause regarding the personal estate of Queen Elizabeth II. That private collection is separate from the state regalia, yet the letter's patent contained a cross-reference to a closed appendix. This appendix remains locked in the Royal Archives at Windsor. The California lawyers could not access the text, leaving them blind to whether the private inheritance had also been restructured behind the scenes. The puzzle was solved by a retired high court judge who spoke anonymously to a legal journal. The cross-reference did not alter the ownership of the private jewelry. Instead, it created a reciprocal security agreement. If any item from the private collection is used for an official state function, it temporarily falls under Catherine's security jurisdiction as guardian. The king had effectively linked the two collections under a single security umbrella, preventing any future division of the assets. This revelation opened a much larger question regarding the long-term status of the Duke of Sussex. By codifying Catherine's absolute authority over the symbols of state legitimacy, the king placed a permanent constitutional barrier between Harry and the physical heritage of the monarchy. It was a clear signal that the palace was planning for a future that did not include the California branch of the family, even in a ceremonial capacity. The reaction from the Sussex's supporters was swift. Online platforms associated with their charitable foundation began questioning the necessity of the appointment. They argued that the creation of a life peerage for Catherine was an unnecessary concentration of power during a time of national economic difficulty. However, the British public reaction was overwhelmingly positive, with polls showing strong support for securing the treasures under Catherine's care. The day ended with a quiet meeting between Harry and his chief of staff. They reviewed the schedule for their upcoming international visits. The legal shift in London meant that any appearance of royal status during their overseas tours would face intense scrutiny. They could no longer claim a connection to the historic fabric of the crown when the crown itself had legally locked its doors. The California household adjusted its strategy by nightfall. The media campaign for their new projects was quietly paused for 48 hours to allow the royal news cycle to cool down. Harry spent the evening in his private study, looking out over the Pacific. The legal lines were drawn, the documents were filed in the High Court, and the keys were officially in London. The distance between Montecito and Windsor Castle had never felt more permanent. The Coronation Stone strategy. The black unmarked vans arrived at the Tower of London at precisely 2 a.m. A light summer rain fell over the ancient cobblestones, slicking the tarmac around the outer walls. A team of elite protection officers from the Metropolitan Police's Royalty Unit quietly took their positions around the perimeter of the Jewel House. This was not a standard security drill for the benefit of tourists or low-level staff. It was a secret, full-scale operational rehearsal, ordered directly by Catherine's office. The goal was to test the new emergency evacuation protocol for the realm's most sacred assets. The king's recent medical updates had added a sharp sense of urgency to the exercise. Courtiers knew they were running out of time to secure the absolute transition of power. The government had quietly given its full blessing to this strategy weeks earlier. The Home Secretary signed a confidential order allowing the military to integrate its secure communications networks directly with Catherine's private security detail. This move effectively bypassed the traditional, slow-moving palace committees that usually manage royal logistics. The politicians wanted a seamless continuity plan in place without any administrative delays. If the king's health suddenly took a turn for the worse, the physical symbols of sovereignty would already be under the absolute control of the future queen. The strategy ensured that no constitutional vacuum could emerge during a period of national transition. During the 4-hour exercise, technical teams tested the newly installed biometric lockout systems inside the subterranean vaults. Under the old protocols, a mechanical skeleton key kept by the Lord Chamberlain could open any vault in the event of an emergency. That rule was now entirely obsolete. The new system required a live, encrypted digital signal from Catherine's personal authorization device to unlock the main display cases. The engineers successfully simulated a total power failure and an external communication blackout, proving that the treasures would remain permanently sealed inside the earth unless Catherine herself authorized their release. This level of intense preparation pointed to a much larger political reality within the United Kingdom. By placing the keys to the kingdom firmly in Catherine's hands, Charles was establishing a co-sovereignty in all but name. Prince William stood right beside his wife during the post-drill briefing at 4 in the morning, reviewing the diagnostic data with the security chiefs. The couple was no longer just waiting for their time to ascend the throne. They were actively managing the constitutional framework of the state while the sitting monarch focused on his recovery. The power dynamics within the family had shifted permanently from Buckingham Palace to Kensington Palace. The physical reality of this new arrangement became clear when the team tested the transport logistics for the imperial state crown. The crown is not merely a decorative piece. It is the essential legal component for the state opening of Parliament. The drill required the transport team to move a weighted replica of the crown from the Tower Vault to an armored vehicle within 90 seconds. The route went through the hidden back exits of the fortress, completely avoiding the public entrance gates facing the river. Every movement was logged on a secure server that reported directly to Catherine's private secretary. This strict operational control caused a wave of whispers among the senior wardens of the tower. Many of these staff members are retired military veterans who have guarded the fortress for decades. They were accustomed to a system where the master of the jewel house managed daily operations under the direction of the Lord Chamberlain. Now, they found themselves taking direct orders from a small specialized team appointed by the Princess of Wales. The old ceremonial hierarchy was being replaced by a modern, hyper-efficient security apparatus designed to survive any political crisis. The urgency behind the strategy was directly tied to the upcoming autumn political calendar. The government was preparing to introduce several major legislative packages, and the King's presence at Westminster was vital for the symbolic opening of the session. However, behind closed doors, his medical advisors were drafting contingency plans in case the King's energy levels dropped. By establishing Catherine as the guardian now, the palace avoided a scenario where the government would have to appoint a temporary council of state to manage the royal regalia. Catherine held the authority independently of any political appointment. This structural independence introduced a new mystery into the legal community. Several high-profile constitutional lawyers noted that the wording of the letter's patent gave Catherine the title for life. This meant that even when William eventually becomes king, Catherine will retain her individual status as the guardian of the crown jewels. She will not hold the power merely as a queen consort relying on her husband's authority. She will hold it as an independent officer of the state. The reason for this permanent arrangement was resolved during a private briefing between the palace solicitors and the Prime Minister's legal team. They wanted to ensure that the security of the state treasures could never be challenged during any future family disputes or divorces within the wider royal tree. By locking the title into a lifetime appointment, the crown created a legal fortress that cannot be dismantled by future monarchs without a specific, highly controversial act of Parliament. The decision was final and permanent. The rehearsal ended just before the first public tour groups arrived at the historic site at 6 in the morning. The heavy iron doors were locked back down. The replica items were returned to their secure transit cases. and the plainclothes security teams blended into the morning London crowds. To the outside world, it looked like any other routine day at the Tower of London. Visitors lined up to view the glittering displays, completely unaware of the high-stakes constitutional exercise that had concluded just hours before. But behind the scenes, the successful drill confirmed that the power shift was complete. The legal shield created by King Charles was now backed by raw operational force. The keys were changed, the systems were verified, and the future queen was firmly in control of the realm's physical history. The monarchy had successfully secured its most valuable assets, ensuring that the transition to the next reign was fully protected long before the first crown was passed. The final signature on the letter's patent did more than secure a collection of gold and diamonds. It permanently redrew the map of royal authority. Catherine has transformed from a commoner entering the royal family into the ultimate protector of the realm's physical history. King Charles has made his choice, placing his absolute trust in the future queen to guard the very soul of the monarchy.